Imagine a 6-year-old girl whispering, "It hurts when I sit," to her teacher with eyes full of fear. What that teacher uncovered next was so horrifying it brought the police, the media, and the entire community to its knees. This isn't just a story. It's a truth that needs to be heard. If you believe in justice, in protecting the innocent, then stay with us. This story will shake you to your soul. Subscribe now and don't miss a second of what really happened behind those closed doors. It was a chilly Monday morning when Miss Eleanor Hayes, a soft-spoken but firm elementary school teacher in a small Georgia town, noticed something was colciate. Something was off with one of her brightest yet quietest students, 6-year-old Malia Jackson. Malia, a petite black girl with intelligent eyes and an artistic touch beyond her years, shuffled into class with her backpack slung over only one shoulder, wincing with every step she took. Eleanor had been teaching for 12 years and had seen her fair share of bruises, of forgotten lunches, of sad eyes trying to fake a smile, but something about Malia was different. That day, she didn't want to sit in her usual spot. When Eleanor gently asked her why, Malia looked down at the floor, then whispered something so quietly, Eleanor leaned in to hear her again. "It hurts when I sit," the girl said, trembling. Those 5 words made Eleanor's stomach twist into knots. She knew she couldn't ignore it. She gently took Malia to the nurse's office under the guise of a routine checkup. But the moment the school nurse, Ms. Harper, helped the girl out of her chair, both women gasped. Malia's lower back and upper thighs were covered in deep purple bruises, some old, yellowed, some fresh. Elena's voice was shaking when she said, "I have to make a call." Within minutes, the school principal was involved, and Child Protective Services had been notified. By the end of the day, the local police were knocking on Malia's front door. What followed next would unravel a chain of secrets so shocking. The entire town, once known for its quiet southern charm, would become the center of a national media storm. Officers discovered that Malia lived with her mother, Tasha, a single parent working 3 jobs to keep the lights on. But Malia's bruises didn't match up with Tasha's caring personality. Investigators quickly learned that during the hours Tasha was at work, Malia was left with her mother's boyfriend, Clyde, an ex-con with a violent record and a short fuse. Clyde was arrested the same day, after Malia bravely told Detective Ramirez what he had done, spanking her with a thick belt for spilling juice, pushing her down when she talked too much, and forcing her to sit on her knees for hours as punishment. The entire interrogation was heartbreaking. But what really shook Eleanor and the country was when Malia said, "He said if I told, Mommy would go to jail too." That twisted manipulation nearly protected Clyde until surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera revealed Clyde dragging Malia back inside the apartment by her arm one evening while Tasha was still at work. At that point, Tasha broke down in court, sobbing uncontrollably, claiming she didn't know. But was that the truth? Or was she lying to protect herself, fearing she'd lose everything, including her daughter? Chapter 2 revealed the full storm. Social workers dug deeper into Clyde's history and found that he'd been accused of abuse before toward a previous girlfriend's children. But the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. With Malia's case now in the spotlight, the news media caught wind, sparking protests and public outcry demanding stricter background checks on adults left alone with children. But the twist came when one of Tasha's coworkers came forward, anonymously, revealing that Tasha had seen bruises before multiple times, but blamed them on Malia being clumsy. CPS had previously visited their home 9 months earlier after an anonymous tip from a neighbor, but closed the case after a brief home visit where Clyde conveniently wasn't present. The public turned their attention to the broken system that had failed this child. Meanwhile, in foster care, Malia drew pictures every day, mostly of trees, sunshine, and oddly, a faceless man standing behind bars. Eleanor, haunted by what her student had endured, started visiting Malia every week, bringing books, dolls, crayons, most importantly, comfort. It was during one of those visits that Malia whispered something new. He wasn't the only one. Chapter 3 Unmasked, a Darker Truth. With therapy and safety, Malia began to speak more. And what she revealed horrified everyone involved. Clyde had friends who would come over sometimes. One man, she remembered, had a dragon tattoo on his neck. Detective Ramirez reopened the case, digging into Clyde's phone records and social media. They found messages encrypted, deleted, then recovered, suggesting Clyde may have been involved in something far more sinister, a child trafficking ring. Using his connection to vulnerable single mothers, Clyde had allegedly offered children to a network of predators under the pretense of babysitting or hosting sleepovers. The horror of it shook the nation. Malia's words became the center of an FBI-led investigation that would spread across 3 states. As arrests were made, more victims were discovered: dumb, voiceless children who had lived through unspeakable trauma. Clyde refused to speak during trial, but it didn't matter. The evidence buried him. He was sentenced to life without parole. Tasha, now facing charges of neglect, stood on trial as well. But something happened that no one expected. Eleanor, the teacher who first believed Malia, spoke during sentencing. Her testimony painted a picture not just of a mother who failed, but of a system that failed both mother and child. "We ask these women to raise children with no help, no support, and we punish them when they collapse under the weight of survival," she said, tears in her voice. Tasha made mistakes, but the state made more. The judge agreed, sentencing Tasha to rehabilitation, therapy, and a monitored reunification program instead of prison. By Chapter 4, the story had evolved into a powerful symbol of change. Eleanor started a nonprofit called Listen First, designed to train teachers, parents, and caregivers on how to recognize subtle signs of child abuse. Malia, now 7, was placed in her mother's care again, but only after an intensive 9-month review period where Tasha proved she could be a safe, present parent. They moved to a new town, started over. The final twist: Malia stood up in front of her new 2nd grade class and read an essay titled, "What I Want to Be." She said, "I want to be a teacher like Miss Hayes, because she believed me." The room was silent. Eleanor, sitting in the back row, wept. This story, one that began with a whisper, "It hurts when I sit," ended with a child standing, tall, brave, and unbroken. Justice didn't undo the pain, but it gave Malia something even more powerful: her voice. And that voice, though once silenced, now rings louder than ever. Subscribe now for more stories that matter, stories that uncover truth, defend the voiceless, and remind us all that one person, one teacher can change everything.